Good morning. You're watching News9 Live. I am Shweta Kothari. Padma Vibhushan awardee and Chairman Emeritus of Tata Sons, Ratan Tata, passed away at the Breach Candy Hospital in Mumbai on Wednesday night. The 86-year-old industrialist was in critical condition. He was admitted in the intensive care unit of the hospital. Earlier this week, Ratan Tata shared an update on his health, stating he was undergoing routine medical investigations due to age-related conditions. He was admitted late Sunday night between 12:30 to 1 a.m. after experiencing low blood pressure and was being treated in the ICU. Sharing the tragic news of his death, Tata Sons chairman N. Chandrasekaran said that we bid farewell to Ratan Tata, a truly uncommon leader whose immeasurable contributions have shaped not only Tata Group but also the very fabric of our nation. Now, Chandrasekaran described Tata as a friend, a mentor and a guide, noting that under his leadership, starting 1991, Tata Group significantly expanded its global presence while also upholding ethical values. Ratan Tata and his mortal remains will be kept at the NCPA for darshan between 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. in Mumbai today. Maharashtra government has declared a one-day mourning in respect of Ratan Tata's death. All government buildings will have the national flag at half-mast and no cultural or entertainment program of the government will be held today. Ratan Tata's funeral will be conducted as per state honours. Ratan Tata leaves behind a rich legacy.
अनमोल रत्न कहते हैं वो रहा नहीं। ये भारत का कोहिनूर, हरपला भारत का कोहिनूर रहा नहीं, हमसे बिछड़ गया है, ऐसा मैं कहूंगा। और रतन टाटा जी हमारे में नहीं रहे, ये बहुत ही वेदनादायी दुखद घटना है हमारे लिए, पूरे देश के लिए। पूरे देश का एक अभिमान था, हमारे महाराष्ट्र का भी अभिमान था। एक इतने बड़े ओहदे पर पहुंचने के बाद इतना सीधा साधा रहना, जमीन से जुड़ा रहना, ये बहुत कठिन काम वो करते थे। लाखों लोगों को उन्होंने उद्योजक बनाया। उनकी इंडस्ट्री बहुत पुरानी है और ऐसे टाटा कंपनी के वो सर्वे सर्वा थे। और आज मैं यही कहूंगा कि उनको देखकर लोगों में ऊर्जा आती थी, प्रेरणा आती थी। और
रतन टाटा जी ये एक बहुत ही सफल उद्योगपति तो थे ही, लेकिन उससे भी बड़े व्यक्ति के रूप में हम उनको देखते हैं, क्योंकि जिस प्रकार से उन्होंने देश के लिए और समाज के लिए काम किया है।
All right, that is the legacy of Ratan Tata. The man was a legend and popular amongst all age groups. Kartik Malhotra here with me in the studio. Kartik, when we talk about Ratan Tata, we're not just talking about an industrialist. We're talking about a man who was as invested in philanthropy, who was invested in care for animals. The man was known for more than what he did as at the helm of Tata Sons from 1991 onward.
So, Shweta, I think, to describe the life of Ratan Tata on a show sitting in a studio is next to impossible. Absolutely. Because I think, volumes and volumes of literature can be written on him, films can be made on him, and there can be multiple creations of art which, in their own humble way, could depict the life of Ratan Tata. But if we were to try to, sum up his life, there are industrialists, there are entrepreneurs, there are philanthropists, there are nation builders, and I think Ratan Tata was the embodiment of all these virtues rolled into one human being. Anybody you speak to, in fact, even if you recount any interactions that you as a journalist would have had with Ratan Tata was one man who would ensure that every email sent to him would be replied on the same day. And in case he took a day longer to reply to an email, the email would start with an apology. So we've written to him multiple times requesting him to come at an event or to come on a show, and every time the email would be directly answered by him. If he were not available to attend your request, he would specify the reasons why he's unable to be there. So that's the kind of humility, and that's the value, and those are the ethos which, you know, in today's corporate world and in today's startup ecosystem, you find absolutely absent.
Absolutely.
Now, I was talking about nation building as, you know, as one of the virtues. I think what Tata Group has given to India over its 150 years of legacy is incomparable. And you know, you may want to compare a family-run business like Tata Group with any other out there globally. But it's, for example, it's very simple to define what Ford does, right? Ford is a car maker. It's very easy to define, let's say, what Samsung does. Samsung is an electronics maker, started as a retailer, became an electronics maker. And these are all big, legendary, historic companies. But Tata Group and Ratan Tata, as you know, at the helm of the Tata Group from 1991 to 2012, has ensured that when you say Tata Group, there are so many multiple images that come to your mind that any alliteration, auto to aerospace, salt to steel, you know, electronics, technology, retail,
almost every space.
So it has been instrumental in giving employment to 6 lakh people globally. And that's the kind of change that Tata Group has brought into the lives of people, not just in India, but across the world.
All right. So while we are here, and as you rightly said, it would be a disservice if we try and sum up his life in half an hour, but that's all the time we have. So let's begin with 1991, when he actually took over as the chairman of Tata Sons, amid, you know, the opposition from people who were relatively common or more known faces and were expected to really succeed the business, but they did not, and Ratan Tata did. He was a humble man, he was a coy and a shy person, but the turnaround that we've seen since 1991, some of his major milestones, let's quickly you know, tell our viewers as to where the group was when he inherited the powers and to where it is today.
Right. So, you know, inheritance actually in the context of Ratan Tata is a bit of a misnomer, though he had the Tata surname, though he had the blood of the Tata family in him. But unfortunately, when he was just a child, his parents had separated, and he was not the natural direct heir of the Tata Group. And in fact, you know, he because of his merit and because of what he brought to the table, ended up becoming the chairperson of the Tata Group in 1991, and that continued until 2012. But I think, you know, milestones in that short 21-year stint are plenty. But I think something that really sticks out is definitely the launch of Tata Motors, definitely the acquisition of Corus from you know, a UK-based steel maker, JLR, the rise, in fact, the birth and the rise of Tata Consultancy Services to a point that during his helm as chairman ended up becoming the most valued IT company in India. You know, these are some of the you know, the most obvious instances that come to one's mind. But I think if you look at the period from 1991 to 2012, it has also been a very formidable period for India's own history, because 1991 is when India actually saw liberation. So India's takeoff was beginning in 1991, synchronized with the rise of Ratan Tata, who was leading back then India's most valuable you know, conglomerate. And from a $4 billion turnover in 1991, Ratan Tata was able to scale it up to $100 billion by the time he hung up his boots in 2012. But I think if you look at the steel story, I think without the acquisition of Tata Steel, UK steel industry was failing, and it was pretty much on the verge of crumbling. There were job losses. The entire British economy was dependent on steel, and Ratan Tata really came as a knight in shining armor and invested $12 billion
and rescued
the entire steel industry of the United Kingdom.
And who would have thought?
And who would have thought?
Barely
I mean, this is
to
I
50
think,
years since independence, a homebred, indigenous Indian companies goes out to the UK and rescues their steel business.
I remember, 7, 8 years prior to that, Shweta. So we are talking about 2007, I think, when the acquisition, when the steel acquisition happened. But about 7, 8 years prior to that, Tetley, which was a homegrown UK brand, got acquired by Tata Tea to a point that Tata Global Beverages became the world's largest tea maker. So, the what we call today as reverse colonization actually began to happen in the corporate world, with Indian companies making a foray internationally, not just to expand their own businesses, their own domestic businesses, but to go out and purchase, buy big brands globally and roll them back into the Indian company. All that began with Ratan Tata, and 2000 was the year when Tetley got acquired. 2007 is when you're talking about the Corus deal, and
2008 was a big milestone, and I want to come to that because I think that's a story for everybody to tell. And people talk about this story on social media like nothing. It is one of the most talked about deals, and that is the acquisition of Jaguar Land Rover. For the benefit of our viewers, let's take them back to when Ratan Tata actually went to Ford, because he was trying to sell his passenger car business. It was dwindling, it wasn't doing too well, and he heard back from Ford in a meeting, and there are people who can attest to it, is when Ford Group chairman went around and told him, you have no depth. We don't know why you started a passenger car business if you don't understand the market. And he was solemn during that flight from the US in Detroit to Bombay, and 10 years later, Tata Motors ends up acquiring Jaguar Land Rover. That is a story to tell.
Yeah, so I think, the run-up to that story, while the Bill Ford story, of course, was a snarky comment on the audacity of an Indian entrepreneur, and no less Ratan Tata himself. But I think the seeds of becoming an automobile major were sowed by Ratan Tata in the Tata Group in the 1990s. Back in the day, I'm not sure how many of our viewers would be able to recall, but there was India's first SUV called Tata Sierra. And then there was a longer sedan SUV, a crossover of its kind called the Tata Estate. And these were two vehicles which nobody really understood where they came from. Hey, Tata Group has got its sticker on Tata Sierra and Tata Estate. Is Tata into the automobile industry at all or not? So even as young kids in India, when we would look at those cars looked damn good. And they were aspirational. But something changed down the line, and I think that had to do again with the state of the economy, with the disposable incomes available to the average Indian, when Ratan Tata in the late 1990s actually came up with the first fully made in India car, which went by the name of Tata Indica. Right. So Tata Indica was pretty much the the initiation of made in India automobiles, made in India four-wheelers. And the Indica, of course, I mean, it wasn't appreciated as much by consumers because they wanted better plastic, they wanted a better body, they wanted less noisy engines. But hey, this was pretty much the first car in which every nut, every bolt and everything that went into it was manufactured in India. And I happened to visit one of the Tata Motors factories in Pimpri Gaon in Maharashtra once. And to my surprise and to my pleasant surprise, I saw that the entire shop floor, which was assembling the music systems that went into the Tata Indica, which was stitching the fabric that went onto the seats of the Indica and the Indigo, were all being done by women. It was a factory which had 100% women employment on their books. But cut to, an ambitious, audacious plan which backfired.
Exactly. Not all ambitious plan really succeeded for Ratan Tata, right? Come to think of it, Nano was also a great learning lesson on what Indian consumers really want, what their needs are, as opposed to what they're willing to buy.
Yeah, so, I think Nano, unfortunately, and this is something that Ratan Tata admitted to himself.
He did, absolutely.
He said that Tata Nano's positioning was wrong. While the idea was to have a $2,500 car, which was unbelievable for anybody in the world, but to give Indians a car priced at 1 lakh rupees was a dream that Ratan Tata cherished and lived up to that dream. Despite the problems that Ratan Tata faced with Mamata Banerjee's protests, Mamata Banerjee-led protests in Singur in West Bengal, where after months and months of strikes and delays and disruptions in the construction of the factory, the entire Tata Nano project had to be shifted to the state of Gujarat. And this is when Narendra Modi, who was then Chief Minister of Gujarat, actually made this statement and rolled out the red carpet for Ratan Tata and told him that, hey, we are open to business, come to us and we will make the land available to you, we will make the resources available to you and go ahead and build the Tata Nano here. And he did. And despite the enormous amount of investments that went into the second factory in Sanand in Gujarat, despite the delays in the project, despite the escalation of cost, I remember when Ratan Tata launched the Tata Nano in 2008 and he walked up to the stage in this beautiful yellow color Tata Nano and got out of the car and he said, I'm presenting to India its own Tata Nano, the cheapest car in the world. And despite the overruns we've had on costs, I am presenting this car at a price tag of 1 lakh rupees because a promise is a promise.
Okay.
And you know, and those are golden words. Those are words that you live by, and those reflect the ethos and the commitment that a person brings to the table.
All right, but it was also a promise at the cost of bottom line, for which Ratan Tata had to actually come out and clarify as to why, you know, Tata Nano did not really succeed. And before we go into some of his legacy businesses, let's also quickly talk about entrepreneurs that he funded, innovators that he channeled, and people that he really guided, one of whom was, of course, Amit Jain, who's joining us on the show.
Absolutely. So we'll just come to Amit Jain in a bit from now. But, you know, you look at any large company that you think of, a large startup, and you find that there is a Ratan Tata or a Tata Group impression on it. Look at the number of unicorns that have been built, from a Lenskart to an Ola to a Paytm to Amit Jain's CarDekho. I mean, these are companies which have gone ahead and built large businesses. But on that note, I think let's quickly have a word with Amit Jain. Amit, good morning. Thank you for joining us on this very solemn occasion, you know, and it's the sad demise of Ratan Tata today. I want you to, for the sake of our viewers, if you could recall your first meeting with Ratan Tata. How overwhelming was that moment?
I still remember going to Bombay at his office in Worli. And it was, so you're meeting the man, you're feeling those goosebumps, you've heard about him. He has just invested in you and you're about to meet him physically for the first time. Me, my brother went together, Anurag, and Kartik was excited to, you know, have his funding. It was the funding, it was a meeting post funding. You enter and then sit in a room waiting for him. And you're, you know, expecting some jazz because you've been dreaming of this man all your life, you know, to meet him. And when you meet, so he's very tall. He enters the room, very charismatic. And I can't remember looking at him and, you know, feeling floored. Literally, I mean it. So that meeting, he sat down. He's such a great listener, an amazing man. So he sat down with us for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, heard us for almost 80% of time, and spoke little but to the point and very meaningful. And it was just an amazing meeting. I still can't forget the tips that he gave me that time. I still probably apply them in business. It was not only just about business he also spoke about being a good human being and how to give back to society. And I think at our company, we imbibe Tata Group to become one. That's the essence of that meeting. That's a impression. That's a thing that is left on us as a group also. And his humility was next level. I haven't met a more successful and a more humble man.
I mean, these are stories of legends, and of course, you know, stay with us, Amit. I also want to understand from you, while you ended up not just becoming a unicorn, but also on the jury of Shark Tank, was there one particular instance or one particular specific input you remember that came from Ratan Tata, which became a game changer for your business?
I think he said dream big. And I think that has left a mark.
Okay. And what do you attribute as the legacy of Ratan Tata? What does Ratan Tata leave behind for India, for corporate India, for India as a nation and for the world?
I think he's a legend, and India, it's not a loss for India, it's a loss for the world. I don't know if I know a more noble man who has not only done so well in business, but has done so well for society. He'll be missed.
Right.
All right, Amit Jain, thank you very much for taking time out. You know, he's a legend, and that's the word coming in. And I believe that would be what most founders, innovators, young people who've ever remotely met Ratan Tata would have to say about him. You talked about his humility. I think a lot of people attest to the fact that he was a great listener, that he would sit down and give you advice. But, you know, coming back to some of his major milestones, I think one cannot have this conversation without really talking about Air India.
Yeah, of course. I mean, who brought Air India into the country? Who launched Air India, India's first commercial airline? It was the Tata Group. It was Ratan Tata's uncle, JRD Tata, who was a pilot himself, which incidentally even Ratan Tata was. And he, in fact, gave India its first commercial airlines. In fact, 1903, if I'm not mistaken, was the year in which India launched, or 1923, sorry, was the year in which India launched, Air India. And then it, of course, got acquired by the government because it was an essential industry and the government wanted its own skin in the game and wanted to ensure that aviation is something that the government controlled. But we saw what happened to Air India while it was with the government. And after multiple regime changes and decades of planning and negotiation and finding a suitor, finding a bidder, finally, who ends up buying Air India? Well, it was again Tata Group. So while it was not Ratan Tata, Ratan Tata had hung up his boots and he was serving in the capacity of Chairman Emeritus until his last breath yesterday. But it was during his term as the Chairman Emeritus that Air India returned to the Tata stable.
All right, and joining us on the show is Deven Choksey. Deven, thank you very much for taking time out. It's a solemn day as we celebrate and remember Ratan Tata. What's one thing that you remember about his legacy, something that you can share with our viewers right now?
Well, an extraordinary human being, I think, who influenced the thinking process in me with his simplicity. He was elegant, but he was simple. So I always would like to call him as, I think, simply elegant person. He has attracted a thinking process. Earlier days when we started our investment career, at that point of time, I think our thought process was predominantly India specific. Somewhere in the early 2000s, when he started narrating his thoughts about India and bringing the global products to India, I think that is the time when he inspired many one of us. And whatever the collaborations that he brought into the group, be it Honeywell at one point of time, which used to call it as Tata Honeywell, or for that matter, any other businesses in which I think he brought in the global influences. I believe that I think that has probably opened up our vision as far as the investment world goes and how exactly I think the business should be taken care of. One important point I think which has possibly left lasting impression, I think it will remain in my heart forever. Wealth is created for masses. Though it is getting created in the stock market for shareholders, ultimately I think all the stakeholders benefit out of this wealth, be it government in form of taxes, be it employees in form of salaries, be it the customer in form of, I think, the product and services that he enjoys. I think each and every space, I think the wealth is created only for this purpose. And no wonder from what 5,000-6,000 crore market cap that the group used to have in 1991 when it took over, I think today the group is having a market cap of around 35 lakh crores. So this is the kind of power that he has produced for the country, and I think satisfied the vision of so many of us as a country. So we really find this kind of leader as an exceptional leader who influence not only in the business, the entrepreneur area, but also in the social area as well, by way of, I think, working on this kind of thought process.
Mr. Choksey, now that Mr. Ratan Tata is no longer with us and obviously he is no longer the Chairman Emeritus of the Tata Group, do you see in the short to medium term any impact on any of the listed firms of the Tata Group at all? Because as we see it, the succession planning professionally is absolutely watertight and there seems to be no problem at all. But do you see there could be some, some discrepancies and there could be some issues in any of the Tata companies now that Mr. Ratan Tata is no longer there?
So my understanding says that the leadership that they have been installing in the group is coming out of the value system of Tata. And the Tata Administrative Services is one arm which has basically been responsible for producing so many leaders with value system. Today, because of this value system that they have inculcated in various individuals, They are the leaders of this particular companies, the group, as we call them as. I don't think that any of this is going to change in hurry. On the contrary, I think this legacy, the system that they've built, is going to drive the leadership further. And maybe I think you're going to see much better and much smarter leaders getting into the group. This legacy is going to truly live, I think, more than 150 years, I'm sure, I think, from here on.
All right, Deven Choksey, thank you very much for taking time out for joining us today. We're of course remembering Ratan Tata, his legacy, and a legacy that doesn't just span over industries that he helmed, but also on the lives of people he touched. He will be remembered for years to come. But that's all we have on the show. Thank you very much for watching.